have done. We've affirmed the importance of the National Health Insurance Scheme as the institutional home of the third pillar of universal health coverage, financial protection, especially in the current climate where donor funds are in jeopardy and we need to look more internally to provide finances for what we want to do. In that regard, I'll split what I'm going to say into 2 points. I'll talk about some of the process issues that came out before I move to the content issues. And this is by no means exhaustive. These are just a few points that I put together. The first point I want to make is about partnership and collaboration. I think it has been emphasized by so many people. I remember the World Bank Otis presentation, the presentation from our friend from Roche, and many of the other presentations. The fact that we must do this in a collaborative way. And the administrator of Mahama Cares also talked about not competition, but collaboration. And us being here demonstrates that very clearly. Wanted to go back to another point as well. For me, that is the take-home message about institutionalizing this engagement. By the very nature of the engagement and by how participatory, how involving, how people are interested in it, I think we must institutionalize it. We will have some suggestions about how we can keep this going and make this a true partnership so that it ceases being ad hoc and it's something that is on our calendar. In the meantime, our doors are always open. If there are certain things that you need to follow up on, please feel free to engage us so that we can talk about some of these things. I think this is the beginning of a real and true partnership, and we want to make sure that this continues. So we will continue to do these stakeholder engagements and have other things in between to make sure that your voices are heard. And I also like the fact that Bampoe was part of us. So the people that we serve, we shouldn't forget. We should make sure that they are incorporated in here. The next point I wanted to make, and someone made this point forcefully, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Dr. Chris Atim's report that came out on the 16th of September 2016 is still a rich treasure trove of information that we can go back to look at. Talking about the independent adjudication body that I think was mentioned by the ED of Chad, and some of the other things that were mentioned. How can we look at those things to strengthen the processes that we have? Next on my list is a regular review of tariffs, making sure that this does not become a 9-day wonder, but we continue to do this as regularly as we can to reflect the current or the prevailing situation economically. That is something that we think is a good idea. Someone said, education, education, education. It was striking. If the Deputy Director General or former Deputy Director General of the World Health Organization listens to his colleague, Professor of Medicine, about bundling and says he doesn't understand. Who am I or whom am I? So I think we need to intensify the way we do our education. It's important to do what we do, but it's more important for people to understand and appreciate what we do. And we can only do that if we continue to educate on the scheme, how we build the tariffs, the issue of bundling, and so on. So those are just a few of the process issues. When it comes to the content issues, I think it was really good that the directors of NHIA spent time to explain what they do. So we had a basis upon which we could have some discussion. But I think the big animal in the room and where we spent a lot of our time, and thank you to that, the members of the panel yesterday, they did a fascinating job. Illegal payments, out-of-pocket payments. Some of the, and as you know, this is something that we are trying to fight very, very, very hard. But it was clear from the panel discussion and from some of the questions that came up and some of the answers that were given, try to summarize some of the things that we learned from there and how we are going to use it to help us to move forward. Dr. Eli, I remember saying that this is a complex issue and may require solutions that are beyond our remit. Now, he said this, I didn't say it. And he said, because he's retired, he can say it, but don't quote me. I mean, we can even think about whether the current model is fit for purpose. This is not the area for that discussion. We are tasked to move forward, but it's something that we must push upstairs to the people who matter. And that is a very long-term thing that we must look at. I think Dr. Abore also, in his submission, talked about framework contracting and some of the other things that we can do outside the remit of this room directly, but we have the ears of the people who matter. And then there were issues around, remember Dr. Nhia talking yesterday about the prices of drugs. What struck me was the examples he gave, and that we must look at it properly and see how we can factor it into some of the work that we are doing. I like what Professor Akwengu said. We can have a million excuses if we really want to have excuses. But we must do what is right. And we must stay within the walls of integrity and move forward in that manner. So yes, those excuses may make sense, but let's not forget that sometimes we take advantage of the prevailing circumstances and do what we shouldn't do. Going back to my brother, the DG of the Ghana Health Service, and I think it was adequately shown by his representative on the panel, who was the regional director from Greater Accra. He showed a willingness to help, to make sure that some of these things that we want to do can be done. Zero tolerance for actually having illegal payments. Yesterday I mentioned Gosu Hospital. One of my directors, Lydia, was saying that there are other hospitals. I've forgotten which hospitals. Was it St. Michael's? But there are quite a number of examples of facilities that have shown the way and are doing the right thing. There's a proverb in my language, in Akan, that says that to wait as you advise the cat to stay away from the salted fish, you also advise the salted fish to stay away from the cat, if that's possible. But by that I mean that, yes, we've come here as NHIA and we are pointing fingers to providers, But I think in this pact that we want to discuss, we must recognize that we also have a part to play and that we must play our part. Maintaining the regular payments, maintaining the tariff reviews, and the other things that we are committed to doing. And finally, today's, I think the data was really fascinating. So we have one board member who, during the break, all she could talk about was the data. We sit on a rich trove of data. How can we use this data to make our work better? It's something that we really need to get to the bottom of. So Magnus and your colleagues, some of this data, we must do deep dives because it reflects in some of the discussions that came up. Yesterday, the regional director for OT, Greater Ghana Health Service, talked about penetration, and we saw it in the data. How can we ensure that we turn the data into tools that we can use to better the lives of Ghanaians? So that is something that we must look at. I'll also task my Deputy Chief Executive Operations. Something came up, and I think the President of the Ghana Medical Association raised it as well. And it came up with Dr. Nhia, primary level facilities that have specialists. Is there something that we can do, or will it totally upend the system that we have? In conclusion, for me, moving forward with my executives, there are three things that I think we will be doing, and this is more on the conceptual level. But I think starting from today, we must have some kind of mindset shift that we will do things differently and do things better and make sure that we deliver on the things that we want to deliver. It is very important. It all starts from the mind. So if President Mahama has done it, we can do it. He actually uncapped the NHI. He's provided the funding. What is left for us is to do what he has said he will do: the free primary health care, the Mahama cares, strengthening the national health insurance. How do we do that? The second is the focus shift. We must really focus on the areas that are not working, the illegal payments and so on. Let's make sure that we focus on those and we make things better. The third is the closing of the loop, the reality shift. Let's do this stakeholder analysis often. Let's come back. Let's touch base in a collegial and collaborative manner and make sure that where we are going wrong, we correct it. And if we are doing well, we say kudos to ourselves. Thank you very much.